Hey all, Amanda back again with another American Ninja Warrior Season 10 update, this time from Miami. Over 100 competitors tried out to advance to the city finals, and all had to face the following course that started with the floating steps. Competitors must jump 6-foot gaps back and forth across 5 floating steps until they reach a rope they then must use to swing to the landing. Next, it's the flywheels, where competitors must swing across 3 hanging wheels, the first 2 which spin, and the last on a pendulum, crossing to the other side. Next, in the razor's edge, competitors must run across 3 tilting tiles to make it to the other side. Then, in a new obstacle, the ring turn, competitors must turn a large ring until it locks into place, where they then grab a second ring, locking it into place, crossing to the other side. In another new obstacle, the slippery summit, which was created by a 10-year-old fan, competitors must jump a bar up an inclining rail, then cross over and down to the other side, then jump to the landing to face the warped walls. Finally, contestants can take a shot at climbing the new 18-foot inclining warp wall and win $10,000, or take 3 shots at climbing the regular 14.5-foot warped wall and ensure hitting a buzzer to advance. The top competitors to advance are Drew Dreschel, who finished with a time of 2:24.74. Drew is a ninja gym owner and just missed out on scaling the mega wall as Drew's fingertips slid off the edge but hit the regular buzzer to advance. Next is Kenny Nimatallo, who finished with a time of 3:36.33. Kenny is a concrete worker and attempted the mega wall but failed to complete it. His run was cut. Next is Callie Alexander, who finished with a time of 3:56.18. Callie was not mentioned by the show, and his run was cut. Next is Brett Sims, who finished with a time of 4:07.95. Brett is a ninja coach, his run was cut. Next is Crazy Neil Carver, who finished with a time of 4:10.87. Neil is a photographer and attempted the mega wall, but failed to complete it. His run was cut. Next is Ryan Stratus, who finished with a time of 4:20.44. Ryan is a ninja coach and completed the mega wall. Next is Eddie Stewart, who finished with a time of 4:25.41. Eddie is a firefighter who attempted the mega wall but failed to complete it. His run was cut. Next is Nick Patel, who finished with a time of 4:33.39. Nick is a massage therapist who attempted the mega wall but failed to complete it. His run was cut. Next is Booty Cawthron, who finished with a time of 4:53.73. Booty is a media coordinator, and it was his first time to hit a buzzer in qualifying. Next is Jessie Graff, who finished with a time of 4:57.43. Jessie is a stunt woman who hit the buzzer to advance. Next is Morgan Wright, who finished with a time of 5:04.81. Morgan is a PE teacher, and this was his first time to hit a buzzer in qualifying. Next is Kevin Carbone, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 1:37.90. Kevin is an obstacle course designer. His run was cut. Next is Todd Borgias, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 1:51.22. His run was cut and was not mentioned by the show. Next is RJ Roman, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 1:51.38. His run was cut and he was not mentioned by the show. Next is Eli Bell, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 1:53.42. Eli is a gymnastics coach and his run was cut. Next is Drew Hendry, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 1:59.93. His run was cut and he was not mentioned by the show. Next is Doug Legg, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:06.31. His run was cut and he was not mentioned by the show. Next is Casey Shikaki, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:08.76. Casey's run was cut and was not mentioned by the show. Next is Jason Bergstrom, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:19.57. His run was cut and was not mentioned by the show. Next is Greg Manders, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:32.16. Greg's run was cut and he was not mentioned by the show. Next is Ethan Serprenet, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:33.21. His run was cut and was not mentioned by the show. Next is Jordan Brown, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:33.28. His run was cut and he was not mentioned by the show. Next is Nico Long, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:41.80. Nico is a student. His run was cut. Next is Rachel Goldstein, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:47.80. Rachel is an occupational therapist. Her run was cut. Next is Oscar Ramirez, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:48.02. Oscar's run was cut, and he was not mentioned by the show. Next is Lindy Eskelson, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 2:45.12. Lindsay is a graphic designer. Next is Rico Rivera, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 3:01.65. Rico is an entertainer whose run was cut. Next is Devin Harrelson, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 3:02.57. Devin is a tattoo artist whose run was cut. Next is Scott Rauter, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 3:07.91. His run was cut and was not mentioned by the show. Next is Michael Johnson, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 3:15.36. Michael is a gym manager. The top 5 women to qualify were: first is Jessie Graff, who was in the top 30, followed by Rachel Goldstein, who was in the top 30, and Lindsay Eskelson, who was in the top 30. Joining them, we have Jessica Clayton, who fell on the slippery summit with a time of 3:19.74. Jessica is an IT consultant. And Emily Durham, who fell on the ring turn with a time of 1:14.60. Emily is a former pro wakeboarder. Her run was cut. So there are your top 35 advancing to the city finals. Look for American Ninja Warrior on its new nights, Monday on NBC. Check local listings for showtimes. Stay tuned for your next American Ninja Warrior Season 10 update from Indianapolis coming soon. Until next time, enjoy the show.